Okay, I'll call this part of the meeting to order. And I will read the comment regarding this part of public comments. The construction management general contractor contracting method public hearing for Forest Groves School District is an opportunity for public comment regarding the use of construction management general contractor for construction at Neil Armstrong Middle School upgrades, including vestibule entry, classroom relocation, additional PE space, and seismic upgrades, and the exemption for competitive bidding requirements for per ORS 279C. The 2022-23 supplementary budget hearing is a requirement for the creation of the appropriation nutrition service fund for the facility, acquisition for improvement of function, and to increase appropriations in the capital project funds. These are due to utilizing nutrition service funds for Neil Armstrong Middle School kitchen remodel and in response to the passage of 2022 bonds initial capital projects. The public budget hearing for the Forest Grove School District is called to order in accordance with ORS 294430. In accordance with the district policy, public criticism complaints about in accordance with district policy, public criticism complaints about the district personnel are not allowed. Kathy, are there any comments?
There are none.
We'll wait 5 minutes. Okay, with no public comments, that section is over.
Yeah.
I will call the work session into order and introduce Elena Santana, District Title I and Literacy Coordinator.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Nice to see all of you. Our team is here. We've got some teachers and Tisa, one of the instructional coaches, and we're going to just fill you guys in, update you a little bit on where we're at for literacy this year. Now that it's the end of the year, we have some good information and a good direction for next year. So we'll do a little bit of everything. We'll show you some data, and then we'll also just kind of talk about what we're actually seeing in the classrooms with students, how they're responding to the learning, and then how that is guiding what we are going to do next year. So let's introduce first. Elizabeth, do you want to start and just introduce yourself and where you teach and what grade you teach?
Sure. My name is Elizabeth Moore. I teach 6th grade at Supplemental. My name is Nancy Denise and I teach 4th grade at Fernandez Elementary.
My name is Melissa Aranda, 3rd grade at Fernhill.
I'm Tisa Metter. I'm the 3rd through 6th grade literacy coach.
I'm Veronica Ochoa and I teach kindergarten at Fernhill Elementary.
All right. Are you my DJ? Enrique?
Yep, I'm just getting the screen
And
sharing.
just so you know, Val's on the, she's on the Zoom, so you
Okay.
also have one other person on the Zoom out there.
Okay, cool. All right, so we are going to look a little bit at our literacy 5-year plan. It's evolving, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that as it relates to the strategic plan. And I wasn't here last board meeting, but Dave, didn't you walk them through the strategic
Yes.
plan? Okay, so you should be fairly familiar with that piece of it. We're going to look a little bit at teaching and learning for this year, and then also an implementation update. We're going to look at some data district-wide and some grade level and or classroom data. And then we're going to talk about what we've taken away this year from instructional shifts and just kind of where we're at going into next year. So this looks familiar, I'm sure. Goal 1 of instruction and learning. Objective 3 really is what relates to literacy. When we are talking about building a multi-tiered system of support framework that ensures students receive rigorous grade level instruction that leads to students' academic growth in literacy. Our strategies within reading and writing is that we are going to implement a core curriculum, which we are in the initial phase of, aligned to the science of reading, that we are going to integrate evidence-based instructional practices aligned to the science of reading, which we have not gotten there yet, but that is what we are working on when we enter the fall. And to identify and provide tier 2 and tier 3 interventions as part of MTSS, and that is coming on with our new assessment suite from Amplify. So some of this is not yet here, but is on its way. And how will we know when we have been successful? Well, we will see we'll be closing the achievement gap. We will be meeting our indicators, which would be our benchmark, would be our most reliable indicator. And then as far as building capacity on the science of reading, we will have more and more teachers and administrators trained within letters. So this is a working document, but this is our team's 5-year plan, 4 years now with 22, 23 already under our belt. So with our goal that all students have meaningful access to grade level literacy and 85% of our students are able to read and write at grade level. So for next year, we are going to be moving into session 2 and 3 of our professional learning series. I'll talk a little bit more about the first one we had this year. We are going to be identifying our instructional strategies that align to literacy. We don't have that identified or aligned in our classrooms yet. So that is what we need to work on starting in the fall. Going into next year, we have 25% of our certified staff enrolled in letters education course. We have 61% of our K-6 administrators and 3 district administrators enrolled in letters going into the fall. We're going to be bringing together committees to research and identify how writing integration looks in Amplify and also culturally responsive practices and materials. We're bringing on in the fall Amplify Reading Assessment Suite that will provide tier 1 through tier 3 assessment and intervention support. And we are expanding our SEL and literacy 100% meetings at 3rd and 4th grade in most buildings. The following year, we're going to do more of the same. But we will have finished by the end of 2025 our Science of Reading Professional Learning series. So the goal with that is that every teacher, even if they aren't able to participate in letters and do the course, they will still have had some really solid education around structured literacy and science of reading. We will be in probably year one of fully implementing our instructional strategies. We will be fully aligned in tier 1 through 3 course supports and interventions within the MTSS framework. We will be expanding. Our goal is 50% of certified, so about half, 62. And our goal by the end of 2025 is that 100% of our K-6 administrators are participating in the letters course. And by this time, our goal is to implement our writing practice integration and our culturally responsive practices. And then as you see, year 4 and 5 is just more expansion of the same. Letters is really valuable, but it is an intense college level course. So we don't expect all teachers, if it's not right or if it's not right fit for their life at this time. But really, we would love to see by 2026 that 75% of our staff has taken the course. And by year 5, 26, 27, we are going to shift into really talking holistically about structured literacy. Because really what the science of reading is the research, but really what you do, how you teach literacy, the structure of it is really what we're talking about when we say structured literacy. So, but we have to learn the components first. And so all the components come from the science of reading. So that so far is our 5-year plan, and we have a lot more to probably add to it, but a little hard to know until we get into next year, kind of how year 4 and 5 are going to round out. Are there questions about any of that? Okay. So this year in April, we started our professional learning series, and it's not a training, and it's really we approach our learning series as education, truly a class and a classroom learning. So in April, we covered the literacy and the brain. Next fall, we will talk about learning to read and why is it so challenging. The third of the 4 sessions will be on word recognition and language comprehension. And then the final session will be bringing it all together on structured literacy. What is it and how do the components all come together? So for our first training, I said myself, our first education course in April, our feedback from teachers, 1 being not informative and 5 being very informative. Overall, teachers seemed to feel like the learning was very valuable and they felt like they got a lot out of it. If anything, I think it brought new knowledge and or new knowledge and just new ways of thinking about literacy. And I mean, really a lot about the brain, which as literacy teachers, like we're not really used to talking about science and how the brain works. And that's really the majority of what we did on our first learning session. So it was really, we were really happy to see that teachers found it valuable. And some of the feedback that we got, and there was so much, obviously I can't put it all on here and I had a hard time vetting through this, but some of the feedback was, I would like more information on the research for developing the brain letterbox. I want to know more about the neuroscience of reading. This is a great series. I look forward to more information. What are best practices for bridging the 2 languages in our district with bilingual learners? How can we strengthen these parts of the brain to better help our students? The neuroscience of bilingual, multilingual brains. I would like to continue to learn about the science of reading and how we can best instruct kids based on what we know. My question, phonics versus whole language debate, is my interest. We actually still got quite a few of those responses, which I thought was interesting, but it was really telling because it's like, okay, so we still have shared learning together. We have some learning discussion to do and bringing that knowledge to our teachers. More connections between brain learning, language development, and bilingual development. I am curious if certain parts of the brain aren't performing or as well developed in children. Are there exercises or ways to help them learn how to make those connections stronger? What should we really be doing for reading intervention? And I love this kind of learning, keep it up. So overall, teachers seem to feel like it was good learning for them and they appreciated it, that it wasn't necessarily training, but really just more education. Okay. So moving into data, this is a K through 6. This is our EasyCBM data. I know you're very familiar with this. This is the last time you're going to see EasyCBM data. So we're excited about that. This is the English, and so we're looking at fall to spring comparison, and you can see that in most grades, we didn't have as much growth as obviously we would have hoped for, but we did have growth, usually at least give or take 5%. Some grades, at least 1 or 2, I know had more than 5%. So I was happy with this. I'm not overjoyed, but I was honestly expecting a implementation dip. I mean, I really was expecting actually some of our numbers to possibly go back, considering that it's a brand new curriculum. It's very different instructional approach and a shift in how we teach. And we only really did it for maybe 4 solid months. So I wasn't quite sure exactly where the data would land. So to see that we did have growth overall, I was happy to see that. Keep going. And I wanted to share, so I know some of the teachers are going to talk about just what they're seeing in their classrooms, but we are seeing growth in either grade levels and or classrooms. It's just not widespread enough that it shows up in that, district-wide data. But it will. I truly believe it will over time if we're doing all of the components that we say we're going to do. But I wanted to show you some areas where we are seeing good growth that may not necessarily bleed into overall district. So here is the Echo Shaw first grade English data, and you can see that they had great growth. That's hard to see the red, but the red is 69% and the spring is 34%. So they cut their students in high risk by 50%, which is really telling. And then the amount of students that met end of year benchmark goals went from 9 to 34%. So that is good. That's really good growth, and we love seeing that. Next. This is Harvey Clark, kinder. And again, their kiddos started out 11% at or above and finished the year at 47%, 89% well below, and finished the year as a teen, their students 53%. So again, it is important to note that I'm going to show you a couple of classrooms too, where we have seen some pretty strong correlation, we believe. Teachers that piloted last year started using the curriculum right away, have used it as it's intended throughout the year, along with the M class and how that supports kind of how it's getting their instruction. We're seeing some really good things come out of that. So that gives us a lot of also insight and feeling really good about next year. This is an example of one of those teachers, one of those kinder teachers at Harvey Clark. At the beginning of the year, 17% were at or above grade level, and by the end of the year, 69% were at or above grade level. And likewise, at the beginning of the year, 84% were below or well below, and at the end of the year, 32% below or well below. So again, we have a kinder teacher here who was on the pilot team, so started the year very familiar with the curriculum, and it started from day one and really did also make the instructional shifts that we have been talking about, that we all are transitioning to alongside the new curriculum. And I will say this data probably doesn't even do it justice, because the M class is such a more rigorous assessment than Easy CBM. So the fact that those students demonstrated that level of understanding when this is a much more rigorous assessment is really actually really powerful. Here we have Cornelius, first grade. This is their Spanish benchmark assessment, which, I mean, this growth is phenomenal. So we're talking about their Spanish literacy growth from fall to spring. And when we talk about our MTSS framework, just a reminder that we are shooting for that 85, 10, 5, right? So 85% of our kids are at core tier 1, so are successful within the core, and then the 10% that need some additional support, and then that 5 who need strategic intensive. So I would say that we are seeing classrooms where we are getting closer to that 85, 15. So that is really, really exciting for us. Here's another example of, this is a first grade teacher who also was on the pilot team. And so also started the year out, made the instructional shifts right away, started the curriculum on day one, used M-Class to inform instruction. And as you can see at the beginning of the year, only 10%, 2 of her students were at or above grade level. And by the end of the year, 65% of her students were at or above. And likewise, at the beginning of the year, 90% of her kids were below or well below grade level. And at the end of the year, 35%. Okay, so, I would love to show you every classroom that has that kind of growth because they're actually, I mean, we have a lot of growth going on in pockets. We still have work to do. And we still have to work through also how dual language looks and how biliteracy looks, because there are challenges with that structure. As far as how we're looking at the skills and knowledge, how we're looking at the curriculum in English and Spanish, and making sure that there's also ample time for enrichment, conceptual refinement, and or intervention. So all of those are challenges in trying to make it work. But we're really excited about what we're seeing, especially the high correlation of instructional shifts, curriculum, assessment suite, like all 3 things that we're bringing together next fall is showing up in really good data for kids and meaning they're learning. They're learning well. So for year 1 takeaways, about 4 different areas that we have gotten a lot of feedback and learning around. One is the shift in instructional practice. So it is direct and explicit. It is grade level content for all. And it does have that social studies and science content integration, which has been lovely. And I think you'll hear about some of that in just a moment. Also the curriculum design, the structure of the lessons, the scope and sequence, the pacing, that's all completely new for teachers. And so then having to kind of figure that out and figure out how that works has been great and also a challenge at times. The grammar and the writing integration, we've heard a lot of feedback about the really strong parts of that, and then parts where we might need to continue to learn more about the curriculum and figure out, like, for example, the writing. We're really used to dictato, a lot of practice, especially within our Spanish classrooms, and we're still trying to figure out, like, how can we include and integrate more dictato into our writing beyond what Amplify provides. And as I already mentioned, really looking to see how we can enrich the units and make them more culturally responsive, add pieces in, either if it's actual text or if it's just discussion, conversation, bringing in perspectives from other groups. We're gonna have a work team on just that very thing next year. So just I'm speaking on the shifts in instructional practice and curriculum design. Anyone from the team? I know you guys have so many great things to share, but does anyone want to touch on any one of those areas?
So I had the opportunity, I do teach, I am self-contained, so I had the opportunity to teach both in English and in Spanish with the whole entire Amplify unit in itself. And we did my grade level, my team myself, got through all of Amplify in 4th grade. And so I really like the way that the curriculum was designed. And it had the same strategies that they worked on for English and Spanish, even though they split the units to do half in English, half in Spanish, they were still able to, excuse me, practice some of the same skills like vocabulary and writing down information from their books, or taking like graphic organizers. There was that same thing also offered for Spanish, that they also got to practice that same important vocabulary in Spanish, or writing down information from their text that they're reading, also able to transition and translate those skills for those people, those students that are stronger in Spanish, and then same with the students that are stronger in English.
Well, I had some things about the curriculum design. One of the things is, so in 6th grade, the curriculum kind of shifts and it's digital. And so the first part of the unit, the very first unit, gets students used to working on that digital platform. And so that's one thing that we really appreciated, that the first few lessons introduce all the different parts of Amplify and help the students know how to do it. And then also Amplify is vertically aligned. And so as students work through it, they're seeing things in 2nd grade and 4th grade, then again in 6th grade. So they are building their knowledge as they go through the program. So not only did we see students making connections from things they learned in unit 1 in my classroom later in the year. But we know that when they start coming to us with these prior units under their belts, they'll make even more connections as they access the units in our class. Our pacing, we felt like was pretty fast, but we made it through. For the digital, they have a 100 lesson plan that they recommend. And so that's what we started with, and then kind of builds onto it because there's more than 100 days in the school year. But we were able to get through everything that we intended to. And in fact, for next year, we're going to be able to add on more. And so we're super excited about that. One thing we're hoping to do is introduce more of the grammar instruction, like Elena alluded to. And then one of the things we were really excited about in 6th grade was the writing integration. Students are writing on day 2 of the Amplify in 6th grade. And they do what's called a 12-minute structured write, where they get a prompt and they're expected to write for the entire time and produce a certain number of words, which can sound really daunting, but our students totally just, oh, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. And so they did it. And then they got feedback and they got better at it, and they have an opportunity to learn how to revise and how to improve a writing piece. And one of the really exciting things we saw was that writing confidence transferred into other classes. So if they were asked to write a paragraph in science, whereas maybe before they'd be like, does it have to be 3 sentences or 5 or really a whole paragraph? They're just like, oh, okay. Are we writing for 12 minutes? Should it be 150 words? Like, how much do you want it to be? And so they had that confidence that this is just an expectation of school and I'm going to do it. So those were super exciting things. By the 2nd unit in my class, students were already asking, could I have more time so that I can write a better writing piece? Like, they weren't just trying to get to the word count, trying to get finished. They really wanted to produce a quality piece. Those were some super exciting things about the design of the curriculum in 6th grade.
For me, so I teach kindergarten, which looks very different than Elizabeth in 6th grade. Something to note as well is in K2 with Amplify, the skills is separate from the knowledge curriculum with the knowledge piece versus once the kids hit 3rd grade, those 2 pieces combine. So then for me, I'm teaching skills, which is like the phonics for 60 minutes. There's 10 units in that section. And then the knowledge is, I believe, 12 units for kindergarten. I was only able to get through 8 units for skills, and we only did, I think, 4 units in knowledge. And it's harder to get through with the knowledge because it's 1-hour lessons. However, we don't have an hour in the day to do a whole knowledge lesson. So we have to take that lesson and split it over 2 days, which makes it harder to get through that part of the curriculum faster. And we're trying to figure out ways to like get that and get through more. However, the knowledge does align very well with social studies and science. So when my students were learning about plants and knowledge, it aligned when my kids were learning about animal and plant life cycles in science. And then there's a unit on seasons and weather that unfortunately we weren't able to get to this year, but then there's a unit in science that aligns with science, seasons and weather as well. So like my students are able to then bring that background knowledge of what they learned in reading knowledge that they can then bring into science and social studies and learn about those things, and we can spend more time doing activities instead of building their background knowledge during science and social studies time. It's like, okay, we remember when you learned about this way back when or whatever. It's like now we're going to apply it. And same with skills. Skills is like day 1 in kindergarten. It's like, how do you hold a pencil? This is how you hold a pencil. This is how you make a straight line. So it's teaching them the very, very, very foundational pieces of how to write so that when they get to the teachers in the older grades, they know how to do those things. They know how to write their letters and doing a lot of that. And we want to bring more writing in with kindergarten just because we feel like the kids are capable of structuring sentences and building sentences better and more complex sentences.
And I was gonna actually, well, shout out to Alyssa, but I do remember specifically, like a very clear day when, I was talking to Hannah or Hannah Luna, who was on Nancy's team at Cornelius, and she was talking to me about, how they were just like really very actually stressed out because they felt like they were pretty far behind. You know, they started when they got the curriculum like most of us did, and they were just really concerned about, how they were going to finish the year and finish the units. And so we had a lot of talk about let's get a coach in here. Let's like sit down and look at it. Let's help support and plan, and let's just figure out and do our best. And try to get through as much as we can. And the fact that they finished the whole year, I mean, is like so hard, especially in year one, even if we had gotten the curriculum on day one. So I think that like it says something that teachers are trying to figure out how to make it work within their master schedule. And we learned a lot from that we need to sit down with principals earlier and talk about what does your master schedule look like. It's even more challenging in dual language schools because of the time, and how can we make the most effective use of the time that you have so that teachers aren't, really trying to figure out how to like cram this stuff in and really make it meaningful and quality. So that is something that we're still continuing to improve and learn from. And did I cut anyone off? No?
I kept thinking about the scope and sequence and the structure. I get the advantage of going into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade classrooms and see the instruction and the learning happening at all 4 of those grades. And it was incredible. I mean, I knew the curriculum was good and, was aligned, but what I started to notice, among other things, was that maybe in Melissa's class in 3rd grade, the way that she's instructing and, the way that it's having the 3rd graders do something, right? And the words that it's using for her to instruct was also happening in Nancy's class, but just with 4th grade level and deeper rigor. It was also happening in 5th grade and then 6th grade. So I would go to Elizabeth's class one day and she's using, these techniques and having the kids do it. And on the digital platform, the next day I'm in a 3rd grade class and I'm like, oh my gosh, it really truly is not just aligned with the knowledge so that these threads that are happening down at K2, because one of the things with our science of reading and the structured literacy that we know is critical is that we are building knowledge in our students. That is key. And this knowledge isn't just random. They're learning things in K, in 1, that then wrap back around to 2nd, to 3rd, to 4th, to 6th. Melissa covered Romans, ancient Rome. And then Nancy covers Middle Ages, and they start the unit with ancient Rome. So next year, when she gets kids that have had this 3rd grade curriculum, they already have a background, about ancient Rome that most of us don't know much about. So not only instructionally and the instructional pieces and practices that it was asking students to do, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, but then those knowledge pieces woven in, it still just blows me away. We didn't know what we didn't know going into year 1, and Heather, the K2 coach, and Elena and I spent hours and hours and hours last summer trying to build the most, successful scope and sequence that we could. And we had lots of teachers help Elizabeth, and I worked hard on 6th and one of her other partners. And we actually finished the 6th grade scope and sequence for next year already, check. But we were very informed about going forward. Where can we go a little faster? Where do we need to slow down in each of those 3, 4, 5, 6? So it's really exciting with what we know now, just after 1 year. But like Elena said, not even a full year. Our curriculum came late, getting everything going, felt like we were stop, start. And so it's really exciting to see to think about what's going to happen.
And then the last 2 areas that we've been intentional in receiving feedback and observing and hearing from teachers and looking at how students are responding is to the learning itself. And we're getting a lot of really good feedback around the intellectual stimulation. Kids are really enjoying what they're learning, and it's become an intrinsic motivator. Engagement is high. We are seeing productive struggle, and I think someone may at some point talk about like this is very rigorous, and so it is. There is that you kind of have to think about that proximal zone of development, and like is it attainable? If it's not, how do we make it accessible until it is attainable? A lot about vocabulary, the critical thinking, the discussions, and the writing, and then really what I think is going to be most powerful, and it's going to make the longest term impact, is if and when we start to really experience the mindset shift that our students are fully capable of this level, all of our students. And then setting expectations that have strong support to help students meet those expectations, I think, is going to be critical. That will make or break us. And so we are really working to, that's why we have so much in our education and knowledge, professional learning within the next couple of years. And then also we're hearing a lot about how students' mindset has shifted about themselves, which is absolutely fantastic in why we do it, why we do this. Does anyone have anything to add around student learning or teacher-student mindset?
I just kind of wanted to share an experience. I was being observed during practicum, first year teaching, and university supervisor came to observe me during a lesson. I was teaching about Roman civilization, 3rd grade. And her observation notes afterwards said, you know, this is non-relevant, you know, it's more challenging when it's non-relevant. Well, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, geez, that's harsh. And so she came back and I was doing a review, Roman civilization, and the kids were like, all this knowledge just shooting it at me. And her turnaround on that, she was like, I am wrong. Your kids were on fire for learning. I take back what I said. And so that, I think that just kind of speaks volume to that engagement and intellectual, yeah, that mindset.
Do you guys have any, how has it been? I think that, I mean, I would like to know how has it been having kids access the readers, especially when they are not just grade level, but they're rigorous, complex vocabulary. And then you have in some of our classrooms, a majority of kids who are not at grade level. So how have you adjusted, made them accessible, and how are you making that work in your classroom? And then how are you seeing kids respond to it?
So I think the curriculum allows for the teacher to kind of change things up a bit. Like if it says, oh, they're going to be independent or partner reading, maybe we don't do that quite yet. And the teacher is going to be doing a teacher read aloud. And I think, so I was in special education for 9 years at Fernhill. And then this was my first year teaching. And I was still able to reach all of the students. And so I think that is something that speaks volume to this curriculum too.
With the digital platform, there's lots of scaffolds built in and different ones that you can apply for students at different levels to help them access the curriculum. And additionally, a read to me feature is available for everyone. And so often we would all listen to the text together. And then through the questions, there's lots of like, I do, you do to, you know, try and get them on the right track, and then they're able to take it from there. But they also were able to do more of those things on their own as we went through the year. Like there was less, like you could cut out the we do, like you could I do too. And as Melissa was saying, with partner reading or small group activities, if that didn't seem appropriate for your class, you can just do it for group or something else to make it work. It definitely works.
And that's something that we know we have to focus on scaffolding next year. And then the danger of over scaffolding, it kind of is like a double-edged sword. You want to scaffold so that kids can access the curriculum, but then there's an art to gradually releasing the scaffold so that kids can then gain independence in their learning. And so it doesn't become a crutch. And so it's really hard to know that balance of when to start pulling that back. And so we know that teachers kind of, you know, it was kind of like, it was a year of trying to figure out what those scaffolds are. And even next year will be even more of that. And then we'll also have to start talking about, so how do you then pull that back and gradually so that kids gain from, right, or go from supported learning to independent learning. So yeah, we know that's a focus and priority for next year.
And one more thing to say about student learning. I already talked quite a lot about the writing, and students have a very specific structure that they have to use for writing their essays in 6th grade. And one thing we saw was a lot of students transferred that and used that when they did the performance task on the SBA test. And that was really good to see them using the strategies that we had taught them. But after we took the SBA, we were debriefing, okay, how did it go this year? We've taken this state test before, how did this feel? And in both my ELA classes, students said that the state test is easier than it. And they felt like they had been well prepared with what we had done.
Well, really?
to do the state test.
Results. Anything else?
So what are the challenges? I mean, sounds like we're making good progress and things are lining up, but what are some of the challenges that we still have to deal with and that we need to be thinking about as we're planning and resourcing?
I would say having the time to actually implement all of the different areas that Amplify offers, because there is like conceptual refinement or beat teacher enrichment, but this being the first year, we haven't really had time to really implement all the other parts that would continue to make the students' success grow even more. So I think that was the biggest challenge, at least for this year. If we had all those other pieces come together, I could see the growth being even bigger.
And that time is actually teacher time to learn and implement, or that's just actual like structured time in the master schedule?
I would say that it's a little bit of both, just being able to have time to implement the actual material with the master schedule, because there's so many pieces that go throughout the day, and I know that there's a lot of things that the students have to get through, so a little bit of both, I would say.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I saw was that this curriculum is extremely rigorous. And if you open up a fourth grade teacher's edition and you look at the first page, it'll say, the kids that are coming to you should have this much, they should know this. And it's about 4 pages worth of knowledge and skills that they're supposed to have that our kids weren't ready for. So that was a big challenge this year. Was the level of rigor that the kids were walking into, level of knowledge and skills that they were assumed to have, and where we were starting, where they didn't have that level of knowledge and skill. And so there had to be a lot of bridging that happened by the teachers to, you know, not just pre-teaching. There wasn't time, you know, you can't teach everything that they were supposed to know in those 4 pages. We talked a lot about that, but doing the best you can and trying to fill those gaps as you were going on.
Well, I have a good question, unless you want to.
Well, I mean, I have a couple of challenges. I didn't want to, I wanted to let them talk if they still had something to share. I mean, 3 areas where we know that we are challenged. One is, you know, I look at my plan and I know that we're not going to even finish our first series of learning with teachers until the end of next year at the earliest. And so when I think about the curriculum is just the tool, but we're asking teachers to make, I mean, most of our teachers, unless they're brand new, and so they don't have a, you know, they don't really have yet a set instructional practice. But for our teachers that have been teaching, they have been doing things a certain way for a very long time, and we're asking them to make a huge shift. And the curriculum is not gonna make them make that shift.
Yeah.
It's just a curriculum, it's just a tool. So giving them the knowledge and the time to like, okay, I've learned this, now I'm gonna process this, now I'm gonna reflect, now I'm gonna come back to it, I'm gonna come back to it again, I'm gonna learn a little bit deeper, I'm gonna try it, I'm gonna apply it. That just takes time. And so trying to look over the course of, you know, 3 to 5 years, like we know we've got to, you know, we know we've got to get kids reading at grade level. Most kids, you know, all kids, if we can, and we know we're against time in that respect, but we also know that the curriculum that's a side note. I mean, it really is the instructional shift. We don't have instructional strategies yet. Like as a C&I department, we don't have an instructional focus for them yet. And I think that that's right. What Arturo and I are going to do together for literacy is come up with those, but we need that clarity for teachers. We need to get them the knowledge and the education. And then we need to support them. And again, like figuring out the nuts and bolts. Like, how do you use the curriculum? How do you get a master schedule that uses the, you know, do you have 10 transitions in between your literacy blocks, or have you scheduled it in a way where it's better able, you're better able to move your kids throughout the day and use the most of your instructional time. So those are some of the challenges that like won't happen overnight, but I feel really good about where we're going. I have to force myself to be patient sometimes, because I know that it's a lot of work and it's a big change for a lot of people.
Okay.
Sorry, so that was a lot. So go ahead, ask your questions.
So, there's a couple things that I've talked to some of the teachers and, overall the teachers really like Amplify. So are they required to do 90 minutes at one time for Amplify, or can they break it up over time?
Yeah, so we have said as just for alignment purposes, and also just knowing what the curriculum, what the bare minimum is in order to be able to do that, is that it's generally speaking, K2 is 60 minutes of skills and 30 minutes for knowledge. And then that gets a little bit easier when you get into third grade and beyond, because the skills and the knowledge are integrated. So that's what we have given buildings. And then the principal then works with their staff or their, whoever it is that they create their master schedule with John, whoever it may be. And so they create the master schedule.
So that means that there is some flexibility, especially between kindergarten and second grade, that, it's not 90 minutes, but they can break.
No, I don't really honestly know of anyone that does a straight 90. I don't know, maybe some had to be more, but initially, I think most tried to do 60 minutes of skills for K2 and 30 minutes of knowledge. We did, I did advise against, like some principals were like, well, can we break it up and can we do like 40 minutes of skills and then have recess and then come back and do the other 20? And I was like, yeah, you're just basically getting 40 minutes then. Because by the time you get them back and get them back into it, you're done with your 20 minutes. So.
We've talked many times, and Dave too, about dyslexic students. And, I typed up something, but I didn't type it up for everyone, but I'm going to read a couple of things for you, because I understand what you're doing and I understand the scaffolding and all of that. But there are some statistics that I'm going to read to you. 1 in 5 Americans are dyslexic, and it's a language-based learning disability. And the issue that I've had since day one is that special ed says you have to be 2 or more years behind in reading. And 1 in 5 Americans are dyslexic, and there's 40 million Americans with dyslexia and 2 million undiagnosed. And the problem is that there's indicators, and then, kindergarten teachers and that we know with primary school, speed of processing, slow spoken written language, poor concentration, difficulty following directions, forgetting words. And if they're not identified sooner than later, what ends up happening is we have feelings with these children of anxiety, low level of self-esteem, depression. And then we have behavior problems. Because if kids cannot access the information because they don't have the skill set, dyslexia has nothing to do with how smart you are or not. It's really related to the brain and how the brain processes language. It can be detected at age 3. When you have a reading disability, it affects memory, it affects organization, it affects timekeeping, it affects concentration, multitasking, and communication. And, the sad outcome, they say 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 in each classroom. It can be, not severe, but it can be very severe. That 40% of individuals in prison have a disability. And while the prevalency of dyslexia in the general population is about 20%, the prevalency of dyslexia in prisons is more than twice that at 48%. So we've been talking, and I've talked to Dave, and I've talked, I keep talking about this. We know that we can identify them. The problem is who will work with these kids? Because the regular teacher I mean, Amplify is very good. Okay, I mean, I think it's great. I've seen it. I'm really excited about it. But we need somebody to get those kids at first kindergarten and first grade and start working with them. The regular Amplify is not going to do it. I mean, it will support them, it will help them, it will give them background knowledge, all of that, but they need direct instruction. And so, you know, and I've asked you, Dave, you know, could we take our reading specialists, if we're gonna have a reading specialist in every building, and let's say we have a reading specialist and an assistant that's been trained in North Gillingham or something, and that they each have 1 hour a day, that they are working with 2 kids in each building. Somehow, we need to do it in kindergarten and not wait until they've stayed in first grade twice. And now they're going to third grade, and now they're finally identified, and then they're only getting 30 minutes of special ed instruction. And I don't know the answer, but I am wanting you and you and you to figure this out. Because I am really frustrated. Because time and time again, if 1 in 5, and that's what the research said, then how do we collectively put our heads together and we're not waiting until third grade? And so, you know, I like Amplify, I like everything that everybody said, but there is a group of kids that are average and above average that are dyslexic that are getting dropped. And it's also in Spanish. It's not just in English. I mean, it's across the whole, I mean, I could give you the statistics of the world if you want. So I touched up a few things, and there's also.
So Kate, before you go on though, so
Yeah.
what I hear is, your question is, what are we doing about dyslexia?
Yeah,
And I don't know if you want to take a quick shot at that. I can also say that this issue around what was passed this weekend was the early literacy bill. It's about 90 some odd million dollars for the early literacy. We've identified some early ideas around reading specialists in buildings and then aids to support them. We still don't know what the amount is, so I don't know exactly what this looks like, but I can tell you the trend is in a good spot. That's what we're looking for. Now, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the assessment and M-Class and what it will do for identifying.
Yeah, we do have some pieces that are addressing exactly what you're talking about, but they're not implemented yet district-wide. So that's what's coming in the fall. So Easy CBM, STAR, those are not preventative reading screeners. So M-Class is the first preventative reading screener, right? And so the pieces that you were talking about, as far as we can't wait until third grade, we're not, and this will be implemented starting in kindergarten next year, right, district-wide. So how it screens, what it screens for, we have additional features within M-Class where we can even dig deeper. So that's one in English and Spanish. So that's one piece that we've never had before that we will have starting next fall. And I think that preventative piece, because you are right, we need to catch them before they fall, and we can't do that. And with some of our current assessments, are either more of a diagnostic in the moment or standards-based assessment. So that does nothing for kids that have risk factors for things such as dyslexia. So that's one thing that we're doing. I would also say that I feel really good about the shifts we're making in core. And Tisa and I mean, Tisa can speak to this too. We just finished our year of Orton Gillingham, again, refresher training. Well, it was refresher for me, I think. Was it new for you? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I had a lot of frank conversations with Lynn Lamping. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she is part of the Dyslexia Association. She also does all of the Orton Gillingham trainings in the area. And we talked a lot about, because what they tell you very strongly is that one of the most impactful things you can do for literacy for students that may be at risk for dyslexia or have it is you have to have a very strong core that hits phonemic awareness very hard, very early. And that is like, if you can just do that one thing, along then with, of course, other things, as well alongside. And so when we were talking about what are the components, Lynn, like what would you suggest that we can do in core and then in tier 2 and tier 3? Of course, when we get into tier 2 and tier 3, we are reevaluating, is Kendor going to meet the need? That is based on Orton Gillingham, pedagogy, but it's not Orton Gillingham. But I feel really good about what we know about what kids need who have dyslexia, and that is they need direct, explicit instruction. They need phonemic awareness, and those components hit really, really hard and in a really systematic way. And we've never had that before. So I feel strongly that in core, we're going to meet a lot of those needs earlier. I feel that M-Class is going to give us that early data. But I also agree that we definitely need to look at how we're serving kids in tier 2 and in tier 3. Kids that may have, you know, a minor impact of dyslexia to pretty severe. And then looking at evaluating our tier 3, which would be Kendor, and seeing if that, but I guess the one question that I would want to talk more about, and I know we don't have time to do that today, is I do think kids are receiving tier 3 intervention that have risk factors associated with dyslexia earlier than 3rd grade, because I'm seeing those kids receive tier 3 intervention. Sometimes as early as kindergarten, but it's not as intentional as we should be about it. And so that's what M-Class is bringing on. So I would love to talk to you more. I know we don't have time today, Kate, but I'd love to talk to you more about that.
Yeah, I just think that any kindergarten teacher in this district will clearly identify a student that they know that has some issues. I mean, they recognize that, you know, there's slow processing, all the components. And the pieces that we keep talking about, but we don't have the answer yet, and I'm hoping we do, about who is going to meet these kids' needs.
Right, and I would say that is definitely a challenge that we're hoping, we haven't seen the amount yet, because that's gonna be the big one, but we're hoping that this is gonna fund putting people in the buildings who's got the time and the skill to work with not only classroom teachers, but to also pull out and do some of the intervention work, which is, we don't have that. Most of our title buildings do have some of that ability, but not all of our buildings do.
And are we going to have reading specialists in every building?
That's what we're shooting for, but again, we've got to figure out the money part, but it's passed. That's the good news.
Well, I know I'm a broken record. I'm going to tell you something. I'm passionate about it. If you don't know that by now, you're in trouble.
I'm
I'm
not.
Thank you, for your passion. I really appreciate that. I'm a dyslexic person, so I totally get it. And also have all my girls who are dyslexic and brothers. So, but here I am, right? First of all, I wanted to say that thank you for sharing all of the literacy information. I always learned a lot. And I really appreciate the neuroscience that you talked about. Is something I think that's really powerful. In my previous work that I've done is equity, diversity, inclusion person in my professional. Neuroscience was used to actually understand also the neuroscience and the environmental and the biological ways of how the body is all put together. Anyway, I can talk forever
It's
about neuroscience.
fascinating.
It's
I know it
fascinating.
is. So
And I think it's so important for the teachers to learn this, but I think it would be so powerful for the children to also understand how the brain works. And I tell you this seriously, with my one of my daughters who's now 25 teaching in Hillsborough School District in a dual language first grade, and she said, "Mom, if I would have known how my brain works as a little girl, I think I would have been more successful and I would have had a higher self-esteem." So I encourage you to teach the children how their brain works. I think it's so important for them to know that. I also wanted to talk about how impressed I am about this whole literacy as a system that you have all implemented. I've been here for a couple of years, so watching the growth is very impressive. But it's one system within a big, large system. And I don't think you all can do the work by yourselves. I think that the principals ultimately are accountable to assure that the teachers that, you said it very, very well about, teachers have been in this district for a while. You didn't say it that way. We have new teachers, so, they can kind of learn the new ways, but, I'm as an older person now, sometimes we resist things. So when we have resistors, what do we do about that? Because at the end of the day, the data, illuminates not very well, and then it doesn't look good on our superintendent. So we want everybody to be able to do their best. So what are the principals gonna do when someone's resisting and it's affecting the learning of their children? So I'm just wondering about that. I also was thinking about what you were saying, about the excitement of the children that are writing, and they're writing so much. And it made me think about, what are they writing about? I know you talked about the Roman Empire, but are they writing about their emotions? Are they writing about their feelings? Are they writing about what's going on at home? And how is that linked back to another system that we have, which is that of counseling? And how holistically can the whole system of K-12 work together to be able to help our children? So it's not being done in isolation. So when I think of that, I think that you're all doing a big piece, it's a big wheel, but what about the other wheels? So it makes me think about that. I like the curriculum design and the student learning and the critical thinking. I think is pretty awesome. And I like what many of you said it, and you didn't say it, but I picked it up, that you're setting the bar high. And that is so amazing. My daughters went to school here, 3 of them, but 2 of them specifically finished up here. And their bar was set high 15, 18 years ago at Cornelius Elementary, and they succeeded. However, going back to what you were saying, they were dyslexic and that didn't get addressed. I picked it up as a mother, and I took them to get additional assessment. Because I have the privilege to pay close to $5,000 for each child, and then I hired them private to do what we're talking about, is to supplement that. It's expensive. I am not kidding. I was paying probably about $5,000 a year for my kids to get private. The additional stuff that they needed for their self-esteem, for them to not get in trouble. I mean, you name it. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So, and then you all didn't say this, but I thought it was so powerful, and I just want to applaud you for it. You talked about working with the strategic planning, the engagement. To me, when you said engagement, it provides a sense of belonging, which is part of the strategic plan that David's been talking about so much. And that sense of belonging equals success. And that success really is what really makes me proud of having been aboard here. This is my last board meeting. I'm emotional because you guys are doing a great job. Keep doing it.
Well, they got me for 4 more years. Well, they want me or not.
And I'm excited to see you here also. Arturo is the curriculum person. And I think when board members ask those hard questions, they're not to criticize. They're just really because there's a passion for the kids, and we want to be the best school district in the school, in the state, right? So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you. I applaud you for the work that you're doing, and for those of you that are new teachers, échenle ganas, échenle ganas. Just what that means is just keep going at it, keep motivating, and challenge the board also at times when we need to. So that's all I wanted to say.
On your way out the door, you're gonna say challenge the board.
On your way out.
Anyway, this is like awesome. So, yeah.
I want to thank you all for coming, and it was great to hear from teachers, and we know there's lots of challenges, but we also wanted to hear some of the bright spots too, and that we're on the right path. And that's what I hear from folks is, yeah, but it's good work. We still have more work to do, but I know it's always nervous to come and present in front of the board, but we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that being said, the work session is over.
Thank you. Okay. The other-
Okay, I will call the order, the June 26, 2023 Fourth Grove School District Board of Directors meeting is now called to order at. It is 6:45. And place. Oh, we'll call Peter. Bart, not here. Kate,
I'm here.
I'm here. Val. Thank you.
Flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So at this time, we'll introduce staff that are here and visitors and start with this item include.
Eileen Blue Fitness.
Rick Winona, Cornerstone. Marquez Facilities.
Enrique Piñon, Technology Department.
Elena Santana Literacy.
Arturo Lomelí, Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank you, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, vote. I'm a yes. Darcy?
Yes.
Yes.
Val? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Yes, I want to start with welcoming our Arturo Lomelí to the district. Our Arturo has finished moving his stuff up out of Texas, which was a little bit of a challenge, but he is here and ready to go. I wanted to just remind folks a little bit about who our Arturo is. He's already started working with this. He spent the last 2 days in principal training where we were doing McCrell 21. McCrell's done most of the research on what effective administrators do, 21 characteristics. Arturo's both a trainer, he was there at our meeting and already beginning to engage and talk in the meetings. His experience, he was a 6th grade teacher, so he taught in elementary school. He's a dean of students at the middle school. He's assistant principal at high school level. He's been a middle school principal. He's been a high school principal. He was the planning principal for a $125 million high school. Hired every staff member and went through that whole process. And then he's been an executive director in charge of operations, curriculum, and instruction. So he's coming to us with a wealth of experience, and we're just really excited to have him here. And it's already off and running on some of these things. For the last 2 or 3 months, everybody's been saying, well, when Arturo gets here, we'll do X. Well, Arturo's here and everybody wants to do now. So I welcome you and look forward to working with you. Summer school's often started. We've got 278 pre-K through 6th graders, 278. About 135 middle school students are signed up. About 100 came today, so they're making phone calls to figure that out. We have about 240 students at the high school level. They were short about 40 students there too that they're working through. So again, the summer schools are off and rolling. I know we also started to see that today and have a whole set of kids. I can't remember the number you told me. 160 right now. So again, I think we're off and rolling on kind of a success for summer. I called and checked in with the principals today just to see how things got started, and it seemed like it was a pretty good start. Over the weekend, the legislators managed to pass some bills. I sent y'all an email with a little bit of a summary, but the big pieces here: $10.2 billion general fund for the biennium. We did our budget on 9.9. So there's some amount of money there that we're going to be able to invest in some of these pieces, like we were speaking about with the literacy. The early literacy bill passed. It's got about $90 million. It's 140 total. There's about 90 million set just for kind of the specific things that we want to buy, which are reading specialists, IAs. It could fund curriculum too, but I think we're a little more focused on kind of that staffing part of this so that we could actually have somebody in all the K-6 buildings who's kind of doing some of this
I mean, if our core instruction's good, then if we have some way to kind of run those interventions, we should be in a much, much better place. Senate Bill 819 is one, I can't remember how much we talked about it, but it really restricts the abbreviated school day. We don't use it very often, but we do use it at times. And so Senate Bill 819 puts a lot of structure around what happens when that happens, specifically like the superintendent getting quarterly updates on how many kids are actually on an abbreviated day. And I don't think we have any problem with this concern about abbreviated days. I think this law could be challenging in its got a lot of rules and how it may play out in the district. There may be some unforeseen circumstances, but Kim is aware. We'll probably do the same process for all students, because many times kids who get into this abbreviated day, they're going to be assessed by our special educators anyway. So a lot of times we should just start with a real focus on who's getting put on an abbreviated day and how often. Now, we have less than 10 in our district. So again, out of 6,000 students. So we don't use this a lot. There are other districts who use this a lot more. We've been pretty careful with it to begin with, but this law will be very challenging to monitor and adjust on it. And then there's a whole bunch more that goes into this. I saw stuff around workforce development. There's a couple of pieces around CTE, some hiring. It's going to take us a while to kind of, they passed a lot of bills really fast at the end of this. So, but all in all, it's great news for us. So now we start figuring out kind of what that looks like. And I think that's it for my comments tonight.
All right, thank you very much. Kathy, any unscheduled public appearances? And so we'll move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted under one motion. Are there any items within the consent that a board member or superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Okay, so do I hear a motion?
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we'll vote. Kate?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Well, yes. Darcy?
Yes.
So motion passes, and we will move on to the action items. So, hey, Rick, I think you're up.
All right.
You got 20 seconds.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent, Board Chair, and all the rest of the board members and everybody here. First, I want to spend about a minute telling you that your bond management team, which is Dave and Eileen and Mark and Pat, we have got so many projects going. We've got ones that have started construction. We're doing roofing, we're doing tracks, we're doing gym floors, we're doing HVAC, and all those projects, are really kicking off now. Cornelius Elementary School is at a really exciting position. We have a floor plan that we're probably 90% agreed on what the floor plan is going to look like. We have to reduce the square footage a little bit, which is absolutely common, that sometimes we want more than we can afford. And so we're working through that, but the team is doing great work and the architect is helping a lot. We get our first cost estimate for Cornelius Elementary School the end of this week. We anticipate that the marketplace is seeing a little budge right now. We bought an elementary school in Newburgh for about $450 a square foot. An estimate that I reviewed today was a little over 500. So we may have some work to do, but we'll certainly get it done. The reason I'm here tonight is, as we have been looking at the scope of work at NAMS, it's gotten complicated. We are going to do a security vestibule In order to do the security vestibule, we're gonna have to relocate the office, put it in a position where the sight line at the front door will be improved. And then we'll have to, where the office came from, we're gonna remodel that into classroom. So that's complicated, but the most complicated piece, as we sent the engineers out to start studying, what are we gonna do to the seismic upgrades? How are we gonna make the building stronger in the case of an earthquake? Neil has some challenges. It's a tilt concrete building, which is really heavy construction, but the foundations that they put the tilt on don't come even close to today's code. They're sitting on some columns. And so we're gonna have to go around the entire perimeter and find places to add foundations. We're not sure we can do it in the summer. Matter of fact, we don't believe we can. So now it becomes probably a multiple summer job. Unless we find a contractor that would maybe want to work swing and just, do that. So what we want to do is we want to go back to the marketplace, use a competitive request for proposal and do that project as a CMGC project, hire the contractor in about a month or so. And the contractor will help us figure out how to do it before we finish the design. What we don't want to end up is we do a design based upon the engineer's opinion. And then when we hire a contractor, he says, that's not how we need to do it. So Mark has been real helpful with that. They are working on options, but in order to use the CMGC process, the board has to approve the administration to do it. It requires us to prepare a findings of fact, which we did. We have used them before. We used basically a very similar one for the project at Corvinus Elementary School. But in the findings, we have to describe the responsibilities for CMGC firm. We want them to help in the design phase. We want them to develop a bid process that maybe we have multiple bids. The long lead list hasn't gotten shorter. Okay, the duration of long lead has gotten shorter, but we may need to go order the doors early, order some of the windows early for the security vestibule and for the classrooms. They also will do a detailed construction schedule for us for the construction phase, so we can work that out with the building administration and keep the project safe, so that we try to separate construction when we can. We think that it's going to be a very competitive process. We think we're going to get a lot of proposals. And the schedule is certainly complex enough to meet the criteria that the state established that there has to be schedule complexity. We think it's a good way to control change orders, eliminate acceleration, which is we spend more money to work overtime to get it done on time. We try to avoid that unless there's some great reasons to do that. Also, the contractor will inform us what the current market conditions are. Is there something in the marketplace? Is something getting hard to get? And is there enough labor around to do all the work that's out there? Right now, there seems to be enough labor. A number of projects have slowed down a little bit. And we also believe that with the district and Cornerstone team, we have a qualified management staff. So we think that's good. So in order for us to issue an RFP, we need the board to discuss the process. If you have any questions about why we recommended it, I'll do my very best to answer them.
So, it's too long. Is this additional cost with these columns that you have to sitting up the building?
It won't be additional cost, but it won't be inexpensive. So we've got to find a way to go under the concrete walls, add in some foundation without having the slab settle. And so there's just a lot of special conditions. The engineer is working on his design opinion, and we'll get the contractor to look at it. So we hope we can buy it for less. Just by how we bid it, how we design it, with the input of the contractor and everybody else.
So do we already have a dollar amount allocated for Neil Armstrong?
We have $15 million set aside for seismic improvements between 4 different buildings, and that's all part of the original bond. Neil Armstrong's probably gonna use more than their share of it, but other buildings we're not seeing as much need. So it is part of the bond scope. We're just combining the seismic with the vestibule project in one. So we have different contractors working in a different space, and one can hold Neil Armstrong and do the full scope.
There's no real choice. I mean, there's not a choice here, is there? We don't have a choice not to do this. I mean, what you're presenting is a process that we can go through.
Right.
Okay.
We think it's the best way to manage the schedule, manage the budget, and manage the scope. And so, and we've done it before. We just did a middle school in McMinnville where they had liquefied soil, and we put 390 piles in to re-support the walls and stuff. And we got that done in the summer. I think if we have to build concrete foundations, we won't go that fast. Yeah, we'll go the fall.
You made one comment about, Cornelius School, the square footage has to be reduced.
That's absolutely normal.
That is-
Absolutely normal, yeah, because we meet with staff and find out what they want. And it is absolutely normal for what we want to be more than what we can afford. We're on a path to get it closer. And financially, we're fine either way, but
Also, the program we put together, they're over on our program too. So like we said, we needed a library of this space, bathrooms of this, so in creating the building, there's areas that they're over that we're not just trimming back to what the original program was.
and there's some space that we haven't built with like the Family Resource Center. You know, that's square footage that needs to be built, wasn't at Joe Gale, and so we'll have to probably find a way to fund that as additional space.
The library is the same size.
And, that was gonna be my question.
Yeah. That actually comes up.
You got it, Doc. What about the bathrooms for kindergarten?
I'm sorry,
Bathrooms for the kindergartners?
in the classroom,
If they were,
both pre-K and kindergarten, the bathrooms are in the classroom.
and there's adequate space
Mhm.
and that was.
Yes.
Thank you for taking care of the library.
So I just need, well, first you have to ask, is there anybody here that wants to speak in opposition?
We did that before the work session.
Oh, you did, okay, good.
You guys ready?
All right, you good.
Okay, so I'll make the motion. I move that the board of directors acting in the capacity of the local contract review board, review and approve the findings of fact supporting the specific exemption from competitive bidding requirements for the use of the construction manager general contractor process in the addition, relocation of classrooms and the seismic upgrade at Neil Armstrong Middle School.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Kate,
Yes.
Darcy,
Yes.
Val,
I'm a yes.
thank you. And I'm a yes. Motion passes. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Ms. Clute?
So tonight I have 3 action items for budget adjustments for the current year. The first one is for a general fund supplemental budget resolution. It increases our resources by $548,000 and increases general fund support services appropriation by the same amount. And this is really due to the high school water damage from August. I thought we'd underspend, so I'd have enough appropriation for it, but this will give us the capacity to close out our year within the appropriation budget for support service. So this increases resources and increases general fund support services appropriation.
I don't quite understand, so it says the district would like to increase the appropriation in the general fund support service function by $548,000. offset by the additional revenues and paying for the water damage insurance claim. So what does that mean?
So when we adopt a budget for the year, we're setting a maximum appropriation level. And if we receive additional resources in, we can increase that appropriation level so we can spend to it. And since we had the water damage, we spent 548,000 out of our support services appropriation.
Oh, I have.
We can increase the revenue to also increase that to account for that additional expenditure that was not known at the start of the school year.
Okay, you want to make a motion, Kate?
I make a motion that, Forest Grove School Board approve the general fund supplemental budget resolution number 22-23-R06 as presented.
I'll second. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote. Darcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and you got 2 yeses. All right. good.
Thanks now.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. Next.
So the next one I have tonight is for our nutrition services fund. And this is not increasing appropriation, but it's transferring appropriation from the enterprise and community services function to the facility acquisition and improvement function. And basically what this is allowing us to do this current year is move operating expenditures from our food service fund to be able to use those, use that revenue on the facilities improvement at the alarm shop. We're taking down that wall and increasing the visibility and the whole service line. That work is actively in process right now.
Better pass.
One less wall we gotta reinforce.
Go ahead.
The board moves to approve the nutrition services supplemental budget resolution 27/23/307 as presented.
Okay,
Second.
and we will vote. Darcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Motion passes. Next.
The last budget appropriation amendment is for our bond, 400 function or 400 funds. This is when we adopted our budget last June, we had not passed our bond. And so this is increasing the appropriation for facilities acquisition and improvement by 3.2 million. So we can cover the cost of all of the initial bond work that we've done between the passage of the bond in November to June 30th. So increasing resources and increasing facilities acquisition and improvement by 3.2 million.
Good.
I move that the Forest Grove School Board approve the supplemental budget resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay, so the resolution 22-23R08. Okay. And we will vote. Kate,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Darcy, and I'm a yes. So motion passes. And next up is Elena.
Okay, I am asking for, well, not just me, district administration is asking for approval of our K6 Amplified Reading Assessment Suite and Amplified Boost Reading for, it should say, I believe, 2023 to 2024 school year. As you may recall, this suite, the assessment suite includes MClass and Lectura, preventative reading screeners, interventions, instructional supports, basically our universal screener and progress monitoring, including screening for risk of dyslexia in students grades K-3. And then the Amplified Boost Reading is the personalized adaptive skills app that students can access K6, and now in the fall will be offered in Spanish K2. Those skills will be in areas such as phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension skills. So we are requesting approval of the purchase of both the Amplified Assessment Suite and K6 Amplified Boost Reading, not to exceed $121,250 for the 2023 and 2024 school year.
Okay. Questions? Okay, I'll make the motion. I move to approve the purchase of the K6 amplified reading assessment suite and K6 amplified boost reading not to exceed $121,250 for the 2023-24 school year. Second, moved and seconded, and we will vote. Kate?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Darcy? And I'm a yes, and motion passes. Next, Dave.
Yep, strategic plan in your packet is the kind of final version of this. We've got a couple of duplicated pictures, nothing of merit, but the final version is in there and didn't get any questions back from folks. So I think we're ready. We've got a good plan. Again, I went through last time the process we went to get to this place, but we're excited to get it approved.
Okay, any discussion? Well, I think we're ready. You want to go?
Yep.
Okay.
I move that the board approve the 2023-2028 strategic plan as presented.
Second?
Moved and seconded, and discussion? Okay, vote. Darcy?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion passes. This is mine, isn't it? So we're looking at a school board organizational meeting date. And I move to set that date for July 10th, 2023 at 9:30 as the Forest Grove School District School Board Organization meeting for the 2023-24 school year. Second. Okay. Moved and seconded and vote. Darcy?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Val?
I'm a yes, and I can't wait to spend the beginning of my birthday with you guys.
It wouldn't be the first time. And I'm a yes, and the motion passes. Sorry, Val.
Oh, we're doing this virtual. Okay. All right.
All right. Eileen?
So next we have the contracted staffing services for our speech language pathology positions. These positions, the last 2 years, we have had to contract the positions out with a third party. This current year, we're using 4 different vendors, Therapy Travelers, AMN, Allied Services, Pellet Foundation, and ProCare. It's really about the availability and the quality of staff. These positions we've had open for several months now and are still unable to fill them. So at this time, we'd like to convert the FTE costs to services and contract these positions out. We'll still keep the positions open, but we can hire full-time permanent employees. That's ideal. We would definitely want to do that as a priority, but this allows us to start the year off with having people in place if possible. So at this time, we're looking at converting and spending $430,000 in speech language pathology in student services for next year as services contracted. We don't know which vendor yet, but it will most likely be one of the 4 or a combination of the 4 vendors, really depending on availability.
Questions, Bradley?
Yes. Is this equivalent to what we paid this year?
Correct. This is the budget for the 3 FTE that are unfilled. Budget dollar for dollar.
So this is what we spent for the 22-23 year, or has the price gone up?
It's what the budget is budgeted.
Not what we spent for this current year, because there was times where we didn't have them in place. This is the actual budget for next year's 3 FTE, just converted into dollars for their salaries and benefits.
Was there any carryover from people that we had contracted last year? Did anybody stay on for coming next year, or did
I
that?
have to ask Kim. I don't know if any of the current contracted positions are set up for next year.
It's a rough market.
Yeah.
It's a really rough market right now.
How successful? I mean, well, I guess Kim has the answer to that question. was it successful by having contract people?
We were able to actually have people in the positions, whereas this year we kept the positions open and we have not been able to hire full-time positions. Some of the challenges that they have is both salary, but then also being able to have the flexibility to work remotely. Whereas if you're hired internally, we don't have that flexibility. But with contract services, we do. And we are being more flexible with that, but then we also have to have an IA in place.
So these are people that are going to do virtual speech pathology.
Eventually.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay, so.
I just have,
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion, but I have just a thought or something, just kind of to see. If they might be happening, I know there's a big challenge to fight for this type of position. And there might be a possibility of, grow our own, particularly from some of our education. So incentives.
We're definitely out there looking. I'll also say one of the bills they passed this weekend is a bill that allows for some differentiation between hard to fill positions and salary. Currently, I was talking to another superintendent who had this problem because they wanted to pay more for for the speech language path to get them in the door. But you can't under our union, but this new law has some flexibility. So we'll have to see kind of what we might create to try and fill some of these spots.
The board needs to approve to spend up to $130,000 for 3 LGB speech language pathology assistants that are vacant positions in student services for the 2023-2024 school.
Second. Discussion? Vote. Kate?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Darcy? And I'm a yes, and motion passes. And Eileen, you're up.
Most excitingly, we have the Viking House sale. The Viking House from this year's students was up on the market for about a week. And we took all offers. We have one at the end of that week, and it is a full price offer of $685,000 from Alice Peterson. Our estimated closing date is July 14th.
That's amazing. The price and those high school kids doing this, I mean, the cats also.
Yeah.
I mean.
And Chris? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Chris.
That is a team, but $685,000, wow.
And all the proceeds go back into the program for the next year's house, future Viking lots, equipment, it all goes right back into this program, so.
So I'll make the motion.
I just want to say, it is one of the most successful programs we have consistently had. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
It was beautiful. Black walnut cabinets.
Yeah.
That's
Really nicely done.
So I'll move to approve the sale of the 2022-23 Viking House sale located at 1260 35th Avenue, Forest Grove, Oregon, for $685,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded, vote, Kate,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Darcy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, motion passes. Eileen.
Right, so we went through the RFP process to select a hazardous materials consultant for all of our bond projects. This consultant will be able to call on as we get into different projects, or we dive into projects and we see stuff, or as we're planning for remodels and construction. They'll definitely be involved highly on the Cornelius Elementary School. We're already starting to reach out to them for Neil Armstrong remodel, so we can plan ahead and figure out what issues we might come across and what processes we need to go through for the abatement of anything that we come across in any of our remodels or any of our construction through the bond process. So this would, we have 5 proposals, and based on our evaluation and review, we are recommending that the board approve PBS Engineering and Environmental as our bond hazardous materials consultant through all of our bond projects.
have it on contract and from the start to the finish. Okay,
Okay, I move that the board of directors approve the PBS engineering and environmental team as the district's hazardous materials consultant related to bond project.
second. Discussion? Vote, Kate,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Darcy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Motion passes. Eileen, please.
Last one. So the last thing I have tonight is the Forest Grove High School sink installation. We've already purchased all of the restroom sinks. We have about 10 of them that are old and pitted and need replaced. Initially, these were going to be part of the high school projects in the whole list for the bond. So all of the high school projects were going to happen in the same summer. But based on their current condition, we are going to go ahead and get those replaced this summer. So we have the 10 sinks, and then the installation and fixing everything is at $70,180. And based on the 3 quotes, we're recommending it to be awarded to COP Construction.
Board approves. The board moves to approve crop construction for the Forest Grove FGHS facility replacement installation of 17,000.
I second it.
Moved and seconded, and vote.
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Motion passes. Eileen, you're done?
All done.
All right, Mr. David Parker.
Thanks. Before I do, I've got a new contract for John O'Neill. In this contract, you're going to see a 4.5% increase. And I want to explain why that's there, because in this current year, the assistant superintendent's making less than the executive directors or the directors. And that came about through some changing, some differing negotiations. John and I negotiated differently one year from where the directors were. But the 4.5 puts his salary up above where the directors are, where it should be. Everything else in the contract remains the same, except for the termination without clause. We made that agree with the state law for superintendents. So it basically follows that law. And so that's basically it. It's a 4.5% increase. And then we fixed the termination without cause to agree with the state. Everything else is the same. I want to just take a moment and say thanks to a couple of folks. One, I want to thank John for his hard work this year. In the last several years, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he was the upper middle principal and the assistant. This year, when Kevin stepped away from his position, he also jumped in and did HR. We have several people at the meeting tonight who are doing that picked up a lot of extra load. Eileen has done a great job, but had quite a year. And then regain technology. I think everybody in the cabinet is going above and beyond. So I just want to kind of say thank you, and thanks to John. Like I said, he's stepped in and did some hard work for us.
And the duration of this contract is 1 year.
I'll move to approve the contract for the assistant superintendent human resource as presented.
Second.
Okay, so the contract has been moved and seconded for Mr. John O'Neill and for vote. Narcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
I'm a yes.
And I'm a yes.
Okay, moved and passed. We will move on to future board items. An opportunity for board to provide input to future board items and discuss any reports on any of the committee meetings that they might have attended. Do we have any comments? Last board leadership meeting, we discussed the leadership team and the superintendent removing some of the items on the list that have been there for many years that are no longer applicable. So any discussion?
You guys could look at it and then decide if you're, treatment.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay,
And what I was thinking, we'll do,
Okay.
we'll plan it in this session.
okay. Information, the restraint seclusion report is included in your packet. And any other comments?
I have a question about the, restraint and seclusion report. And I know Kim is not here and told me, or I don't know who gonna deal with this, but it says total number of students placed in physical restraint, 25. And then it says, disability status, disabled, 25. So were those all students that were on an IEP? Yes?
Typically they are.
Yeah.
So. Any other questions? With that being said, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.